Yes, thank you so much, Michael. And thank you everybody who's in attendance to hear about this really important project. I want to share a little bit with you about my experience living in Oklahoma as an Indigenous woman and as someone who really cares about making sure that our environment is here for future generations. And so I know many of you may know or may not know that Oklahoma really is an oil dependent state. Really, it's predicated on the founding of oil and the removal of tribal nations. My tribal nation was one of many nations, 35 nations, who were forcibly removed from the East Coast during Andrew Jackson's Indian removal policies and forced into what is now known as Oklahoma. Now, of course, we were promised by treaty rights that that land would be left alone, that we wouldn't have to worry about further colonization. But as soon as oil was discovered, everything was out the window. And so, that's when the land run happened. And many of us were, again, forcibly removed off of our lands. And so really, what we see here in Oklahoma, because it is a singular economy that is so oil dependent, many of our people, including our tribal nations, are forced into these jobs. My own father, he actually had to drop out of 8th grade because his family is so poor, and he became a roughneck in the oil industry, and he actually retired out of the oil industry just recently. And so, I know exactly what it looks like to be forced into a singular economy, because you absolutely have to take care of your families, you have to take care of your communities, and you have to provide those life-sustaining necessities to make sure that we can survive. And so what happens here in Oklahoma, oftentimes we see that our tribal lands and our tribal people are being exploited by the oil and gas industry. What we see, for instance, they're coming into our tribal newsletters, just scouting for people to work on pipelines. And they're also, knocking on our doors, asking us to lease our lands out for their fracking projects. And so really we're put in such a bad situation because we are so impoverished. We need these jobs. We need that money from those leases. And really it's just shown, why we need a just transition. And I think even more, spectacular or really, just shocking, quite frankly, was the beginning of the pandemic and really seeing so many oil workers losing their jobs. Part of my job requires me to, keep track of what's happening in the oil industry here in our state. And what we see every day on one of our main media sites for oil is, so many workers losing their jobs, this company tanking, this company going bankrupt. And what we're seeing is that there's no transition, there's no equitable jobs that can, really fill that gap for our people. And so we're left with, trying to piece together what little we can to make sure that we can make sure our families survive. Another story that I would like to share with you, several years ago in 2017, I was actually working on the ground. I lived in a camp for five months in Southeast Oklahoma fighting the Diamond Pipeline. And what we see here in Oklahoma, because of regulatory rollbacks, many of the projects that are going through our state are actually not benefiting our state in any way, shape, or form. We're really just opening the doors so these pipelines can run through to carry tar sands down to the Gulf Coast, and our people are not even able to get jobs on those very pipelines. And so one of the folks that I met while advocating against the Diamond Pipeline in Oklahoma was actually a pipeline union person, a pipeline worker who I was surprised to meet him. But he showed up to one of our listening sessions, one of our town halls, to really just express his frustration that he couldn't even get a job on the very pipeline that was going through his own backyard, because these jobs are outsourced to other states and they bring in outside labor into our communities. And so the reality is that, we're not losing jobs when these companies come or pull out, because we never had them in the first place. And so we're seeing really here on one hand a loss of jobs in the oil industry because of the pandemic, because of the ebbs and flows of the market, and because these jobs just really are not sustainable anymore. And then on the other hand, we're seeing that the people who are trying to get jobs on these very projects can't do that because Oklahoma has just really been pushed into a situation where we're just serving as the land for these projects to go through. And so, I really think that these many issues, especially the recent winter storms that really hit Oklahoma and Texas and the South so hard really show the failures of the oil and gas industry. And because that really is the only economy that our people can rely on for a stable job and a stable income, which really we know is not actually a stable job or income, because oftentimes you're just moving. My dad would have to often move from job to job to job, just to make sure that we had enough to survive. And so, I think that all of these recent crises are really just demonstrating the need for a just transition. And we need one so desperately because we don't have anything filling in the gaps of what the oil economy has done to our state. We need jobs that, offer this sort of funding and money for our people so that we can actually provide for our families. And we also need the skills necessary to work those jobs sufficiently. And so, I'm just really happy to be here today to share my story about being an Indigenous woman living in an oil dependent state. And I just really, want to impress the need for this just transition. So Niawe, thank you very much.